It works out perfectly. So you sent me this article earlier today, and I was able to read through it. The title of the article is 4 Vikings Losers of the Draft, written by friend of the show, Dustin Baker.
Yeah.
And as always, great content. And Dustin has identified 4 players, we'll say 3 specific players in one particular group of players as the 4th player, that are on the hot seat and could potentially be disappointed by the Vikings' decisions in the draft when it comes to their ability to play for the Vikings.
Yeah,
so to speak.
All these guys, their lot on the team was altered. It was directly altered by picks, that the Vikings made in the draft. So yeah, just to go through them, I want to hear your thoughts. The first one that Dustin listed out, obviously, we were just talking about him, Sam Darnold. I kind of laid out what I was thinking about it before we segued. You read the article, but like just in your thought process, why specifically for Sam Darnold was the draft making his life harder?
Well, obviously, Sam Darnold walked into Egan with a different mindset than Kirk Cousins walked into Atlanta.
And weirdly, they're in a very similar situation right now.
Right. But that's the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is that Kirk Cousins walked into Atlanta thinking, I will be the guy. They're not going to draft a quarterback because they signed me in free agency. They're going to spend their draft picks, and they've got a good one on an offensive weapon for me to throw to or whatever, and it'll be great. And then the Falcons turn around and draft Michael Penix. And it's one of these just like dumbfounded, like everybody outside of Atlanta is just like, what were you guys thinking? Why did you do that? And Michael Penix wasn't even that thought of that highly to go. I mean, that was the shock of the draft that sent shockwaves through the NFL for sure when they picked him up. So all of that to say, I think Sam Darnold knows his role. He knows his spot. He knows that he's making $10 million for a season, and he knows that he's the quote unquote bridge quarterback. I think he knew it was coming, and I don't think he's disappointed. I don't think he's sitting at home saying, "Woe is me! Why did I sign this contract?" I think he's probably thinking to himself, like, this is the league, man. This is how it works. And I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew that they were going to draft somebody, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to try to prove myself, and we'll see what happens. So maybe to some extent, I would maybe slightly disagree with Dustin's assessment that he's a loser in the draft. I think maybe he knew, and
I think Dustin would agree with you on that mindset.
I think he'll embrace that. I don't know.
We'll have to ask him,
shooting the breeze here, but I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that he's, really bent out of shape about this, and I don't think it's going to affect his performance that much. But obviously, when a team drafts a guy and they work hard to get the guy that they wanted, and it's been clear from all of the videos, all of the behind the scenes, all of the KOC. Like I watched even the JJ and Dallas Turner coming to Egan and walking the facility and walking into KOC's office for the first time and dapping up Kwesi and everything. Like there's some excitement around JJ McCarthy in that building, and that's refreshing and that's fun. And I'm sure Sam is maybe a little like, you still have me, I'm here, but I don't know. I don't know that I'd call him a loser. I would call him a very competitive option at quarterback. Yeah. And to some extent, he's got the leg up because he's got the experience. He's played elsewhere, and he was there first, right? Sometimes it's just like, well, I was here first. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I agree with you. I think he knew the second the Vikings became an option for him to sign that, this year I have the opportunity to come in as QB1 with a rookie. We've known since this time last year the Vikings were going to draft a rookie quarterback in the first round, So Sam Darnold, he knew before he signed on the dotted line or even agreed, he's going to come in, be QB1 until he's no longer QB1. And I think that lights some kind of fire under anybody, whether you know your situation before you walk into it or not. He is he's got that leg up. He's got the 5-step head start, and he's going to do everything he can to keep the lead in that race until either he loses it or JJ he can't run faster than JJ. But he knew that, and he signed up for that. And oh, by the way, you also are going to get paid $10 million for your efforts this year.
It's not a bad gig.
Yeah, it's a good gig. I think this was a personal business decision for Sam Darnold to sign with the Vikings, knowing that. It's a sweet situation if you think you have what it takes to make the next step, to do what Baker Mayfield did a year ago today, or a year ago, when Baker Mayfield, he'd bounced around. He had been, the high number 1 draft pick for the Browns with a little success, but then they lost confidence in him and he bounced around. I think Baker and Sam Darnold were teammates in Carolina. Baker bounced from, where did he go? It was Cleveland, and then I know he played for the Rams for a little bit, and then Carolina, and then was that it? Then Tampa Bay. So I think Sam Darnold, he's trying to revive his career with the best case scenario of like winning every game and being the Vikings savior and leading them to the Super Bowl and earning that crazy contract, which can you imagine?
Let me be clear. I would be totally on board with that. I don't care at all that he's currently quarterback 1. If that's the result, we will be singing Kwesi's praises all day long. Like, how did you get a guy so cheap? And that was amazing. And I mean, Baker in Tampa didn't have a bad season, and he led them to the playoffs.
He earned a $100 million contract, or 90 or whatever he got. Like, he revived his career, and who knows? Next year he could turn out to be garbage, or he really did revive his career and finally got into a good situation. He's going to be good in Tampa for 10 years,
And who knows? That could be Sam Darnold as well.
Could be. I think, man, can you imagine us sitting in these chairs after a year where Sam Darnold, and Dustin Baker has said this before too, it would be the most Viking thing for Sam Darnold to just light it up and be too good to bench. And then it's like, well, what do you do now? You just had a guy, in theory, lead you deep in the playoffs or take you to the Super Bowl or do something crazy. It's like, we can't let Sam Darnold go after doing all that crazy stuff. Like, what do you do? That's a good problem to have a year from now.
Well, and I think the good news for the Vikings is, maybe Sam comes out and just kills it, and he's amazing. He has a Baker Mayfield year in 24, and they have to make a decision like that. Well, J.J. McCarthy's still going to be on his rookie contract, so that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And other teams have proven that it's effective to let that young guy sit. I mean, Jordan Love looked pretty good after coming out. Aaron Rodgers is proof of that. And it's not just the Packers that have done that. Other teams have done that too. But I don't know. I wouldn't be at all disappointed.
Winning games is always good. We root for the team, not the name on the back of the jersey.
Right.
So
now, I mean, we're maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe putting the cart before the horse, and we haven't seen a lick of football from either of these guys in a Vikings uniform yet. So there's so much to be determined. We've got all off season to really dissect all of that. But
we have, really quick before we move on, we have kind of seen that hypothetical situation play out a little bit for the Vikings in recent memory. A very young and up-and-coming quarterback had a devastating injury that was clear he wasn't going to play that year in Teddy Bridgewater. And out of nowhere, the Vikings traded for what I think is still a really good trade, Sam Bradford. and he didn't start that first game because he'd been on the team for like a week. But then Sam Bradford came in and was playing really well. His one full year with the Vikings, he set the single season, it's now broken, but the single season record for completion percentage. The Vikings started off with a 5-0 record. And I'll never forget, I was listening to the Power Trip in the midst of that 5-0 run. And one of the three guys on the Power Trip said, like, what do we do if like Sam Bradford is good and like leads us to a Super Bowl? Like, what do we do? And one of the other guys, Corey Cove, was like, well, if he wins us the Super Bowl, you sign him to a lucrative contract and he's your quarterback from now on. Who cares about Teddy Bridgewater? Like, yeah, at the time we knew Teddy would probably come back and play and have a longer career with the Vikings. But if a guy leads you to the Super Bowl, like, he's your guy. Like, so we've kind of seen it. Obviously, didn't play out that way with Sam Bradford and the Vikings, mostly because his knees are made of tissue paper. But we've kind of seen that kind of scenario start to play out a little bit, and it was really exciting and really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Sam Darnold, he knows what he's doing. He's trying to play for his career.
So we spent a lot of time talking about Sam Darnold. I still disagree. I don't think he's a loser of the draft. I think he knows what he's getting into. Yeah. I would say he is, how should we put it? Maybe an equal opportunity quarterback.
Yeah, he's fighting for his life, but he would have been fighting for his life if his backup was Tyler Thigpen. Yeah. And not a top 10 rookie quarterback.
Now, the next guy on the list, I think, is truly the biggest loser in the draft.
You're a loser.
And that's not a loser in the derogatory sense, but it's. I think the writing on the wall is that Nick Mullens won't be in a Vikings uniform.
Yeah, I think it's down to Nick Mullens or Jaron Hall. I think just contract-wise, it's going to be Nick Mullens gone. Maybe both, but probably for sure Nick Mullens.
Yes.
Hopefully via a trade. I'd love it if the Vikings could get a 6th or a 7th round pick or even a swap, you know?
Yeah, he would be a great trade option. And the Vikings could get something for him. Maybe not a ton.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Something. But in terms of a future with the purple team, Nick Mullens has to know that his days are numbered and probably won't be wearing our favorite team's jersey this fall.
Yeah, that being said, I don't think his NFL career is done by any means. He can still throw 400 yards.
Yeah.
3 to 4 interceptions, but still 400 yards. And, I mean, he may be 1 year behind Sam Darnold in that. Maybe Sam Darnold, he's coming into a situation that he's trying to jumpstart his career again. Maybe Nick Mullens is looking at his Sam Darnold's quote-unquote 49ers year, where he can kind of go in, know he's a backup with the potential of flashing when he does get on the field and getting a bridge quarterback contract the next year or even this coming year. I don't know.
And to be fair, Nick Mullens has proven that he can play, right? Unfortunately, the mistakes outweigh the successes most of the time, and that's frustrating as a fan, and you want those interceptions to go away. And you've said, like, kind of famously now on our podcast that, you know, if he throws 2, you don't give a guy the chance to even throw 3. You sit him.
Well, my rule is you don't let him throw 4.
You don't let him throw 4. All right. Well, I was off by 1. But
that's all right. It's still 2 is not much better than 3.
Right. But, I mean, there were plenty of times this season, several that I can think of, where the Vikings just kept riding with him. And
they didn't have a lot of options.
They didn't. But, I mean, he just kept throwing picks, and it was just frustrating. And then we lost all these games, and there was this like tiny glimmer of hope, it just got squashed out, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to watch. So I think honestly he's number 1 in terms of
who had the worst,
in the draft, and maybe Dustin's list isn't meant to be taken numerically. Not sure what his intent was that way, but I think he tops my list of biggest losers in the draft because he's not going to be a Viking, if I had to guess, moving forward.
I've also said, too, and I'll stand by it, the number 2 at any position is a definitive position. A quarterback 2 is an actual position. It's not just the guy behind the quarterback 1. Nick Mullens thrives when he can be the first option after the first guy gets injured. Like, we've seen Nick Mullens, his career is built on coming in mid-game after the first guy got a concussion or something or couldn't play, and Nick Mullens, he can kind of turn it on out of nowhere off the bench and throw a bunch of yards and maybe do something special. He's a really good quarterback too, and maybe that's where he finds his career. Unfortunately, the Vikings have 4 quarterbacks, and he's not the best option at QB2. That's either going to be Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy.
And the other one's going to be QB1.
Yeah, yep.
So, yeah, I agree with you there.
I mean, honestly, the Chiefs could probably use a QB2. They don't need somebody to come in and compete for the job, but if Pat Mahomes breaks his arm, you need somebody to come in and try to salvage a game.
Or if he sprains his ankle and has to come out for a couple of plays, which is probably more likely.
And I don't know who the Chiefs have at QB2, but yeah, I'm just thinking, like, you need a guy. He's best served for a team with an established starter.
Well, we can move quickly through these other 2 here. I think those first 2 are definitely the most talk-worthy talking points there. But Andrew Van Ginkel was a surprising name that I saw on the list because I thought to myself, well, he's a new acquisition and kind of a new toy for Flores to play with on the defense. But then I read Dustin's kind of paragraph description on why this might be a loser, and it made sense to me, and I can understand the train of thought here that signing Dallas Turner really complicates things at that edge rush position, and I could see that, and I could see how he could be the odd man out in that OLB edge rush position. That's kind of a gray area, like and I think even we had a debate like last week or 2 weeks ago about, is Flores running a 4-3 or a 3-4 and where do these guys fit in that, and how do we define what the Vikings are doing defensively? But yeah, I don't know. It could make sense to me. I don't know that he's going to be leaving anytime.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too.
I think he'll be a Viking at least this year.
Yeah.
And
I think he signed like a 3-year contract.
Was it 3 years? Okay.
And it pretty decent money too. I mean, it would be... I don't think he's in danger of being cut. I just think he went from the indisputed starter or heavy rotation guy, if not the starter, with Dallas Turner coming in. I think that's still the plan beginning of the season until, like I said with JJ, until he wins the job, until Dallas Turner comes in and starts demanding just through his play more and more plays. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's going to be the one to lose his snaps to an up-and-coming guy that nobody thought the Vikings would get an edge rusher, an elite edge rusher in the first round of the draft. He may have been one of the most surprised, like, oh, they just drafted a guy that's going to take some snaps away from me. I didn't expect that. I'm not a quarterback. I knew they were going to try to get a quarterback.
Well, I think that's an interesting position to talk about, because I think rookies in that position, I think the margin for error is wider.
Especially highly touted first-round rookies.
Yeah.
You get a little... Your leash. We've talked about that leash for every player. Your leash is pretty long if you're a first-round rookie.
In a first-round rookie edge rusher, I think at that position, like, your job is to line up and beat your man and get to the quarterback.
And wreck some plays as best you can.
That's your job, right? Like, you're not the cornerback or the safety that has to analyze and read the eyes of the quarterback, follow the ball, and if you make one false move, boom, touchdown, and now you're on the bench.
And I think you'd agree, not to oversimplify any position on the field, but I know what you're saying. Like, if you can just be the pin your ears back guy, which in the best case scenario, that's what those outside linebackers, those edge rushers are. There's more to it. We know that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just run at the quarterback. But yeah, I mean, it's not like you have to be a JJ and make sure you don't throw an interception. You just.
Oh, I think the quarterback position over any position is the most complex, and you have to be mentally physically and emotionally capable to handle whatever comes your way. And so I think the margin for error there is much thinner than an edge rush. And I would even say that edge rush position is even more different than a safety or a cornerback.
Yeah, I agree.
Who could blow coverage and give up a touchdown, or even a wide receiver. You run the wrong route and you give up a pick, and it's your fault that the ball was picked off, not the quarterback's, because he was expecting you to be there and you weren't because you didn't make the right move or you didn't run the right route or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I think those guys, they are the pin your ears back type of guys. That's what their coaches expect them to be. That's how they design the defense. And I think Flores, more than anything, more than anyone else in the league, designs his defense to be that kind of in-your-face, aggressive, kind of like Nazi blitzkrieg type of assault on you. Like, we're just going to keep coming at you all day, and we're going to keep coming at you from all sorts of different angles and looks. Like, I don't know. Andrew Van Ginkel, coming back to his name, yes, I could see how he'd be more of a rotational guy in this new reality with Dallas Turner being drafted. But even then, like, that's a good thing for the Vikings to have a guy like that. To like, yep, he's already proven to be pretty successful, and man, if he comes in relief of anybody, he's going to be fresh. He's going to be ready to go. And that defense probably isn't going to miss a beat with him on the field.
And one thing that is in Van Ginkel's favor is he has already been a Flores player.
Yes.
And he wouldn't be with the Vikings right now if Flores thought anything negative about him or his play. Like, Flores was probably the one that's like, hey, that guy, I'd be pretty happy if you sign that guy, like, or you're gonna sign that guy because he's what I need in my defense. So that's one thing that's in his favor already. So it'll be an interesting. It only made the defense better.
Agreed.
But I can see why he's on this list of disappointed players after the draft.
So the last one here that Dustin has is the veteran defensive backs. There are currently 17 guys on the roster, and only, according to Dustin, only about 10 to 12 will make the team. And that's a realistic expectation.
Yeah, and that includes, obviously, your cornerbacks, your safeties, all those guys in the defensive backfield. I mean, you're talking Harrison Smith, who's getting a little bit older. You're talking Lewis Seen, who has been a major disappointment on the field in his career. Granted, he's had a devastating injury, but still. You're talking a Caleb Evans, who, I mean, he's shown flashes, but he's also shown flashes of being pretty disappointing at times. So there's probably 5 to 7 guys in that list of players that just numbers-wise are not going to make the team. That's going to be a very competitive position, just all of the defensive backfield. And I think they only drafted one guy, right? I forget his name. It's probably right there.
Kyrie Jackson,
yeah. I think he was the only one drafted, but there's a few undrafted guys. And obviously some guys that have been drafted in the last few years. Jay Ward, Caleb Evans, Lewis Seen. There's going to be some tight competitions and some tough decisions. Some of those guys might not make the Vikings, but they'll get picked up on other teams.
Who's the first man out, do you think?
Man, so you have this list up here.
You can peek.
I mean, I'm trying to peek. They signed a couple of guys in free agency. AJ Green, Joejuan Williams. Joejuan Williams might be one of the first guys out just because he bounced up and down between the practice squad last year. I think Theo Jackson has a little bit more stability than the casual fan might think, just because he was, I think, the first free agent the Vikings signed this year. So they obviously like him, and he was playing over Lewis Seen very early in the season. We might see a surprise. I would consider a Caleb Evans a surprise cut for me, but only slightly. So we're going to see some of those. And honestly, I think the biggest surprise would be a Harrison Smith. If for some reason, and I don't expect this to happen, but if for some reason he just gets outplayed in training camp and loses the job, it would be slightly shocking, but not fall off your chair shocking to see him.
I think if that happens, I would expect him to just throw in the towel and be done.
Well, I think it would be a very, and I don't expect this, but I think it would be a very personal conversation, and it would be one where they don't just bring him in and say, hey, bring your playbook, hey, and we cut you, sorry. It would be like, hey, this is why you are a legacy player. But for that to happen, it would take a surprise one of these guys to just beat him out. And they've already said Harrison Smith, they're going to be cognizant of his snaps in each game and how much they use him. And we're talking about a guy who's 34. It's football ancient.
Basically our age.
Yeah, but like this guy still has like 70 years left of his life. But I mean, if it came down to that and they're like, we can't let go of this other guy because he's doing better than Harrison Smith, like that's what it would have to be. Somebody makes it impossible to cut themselves, and Harrison Smith, as much as you love his name and his legacy, that's how it would happen. Is he's just not up there.
Well, he's at the top of this list in terms of defensive backs. He's number 1, and I don't know if that's in any sort of intentional order.
Well, if you look at the other guys at the top of the list, one is Harrison Smith, and then Cam Bynum, and then Josh Metellus. Those that top
even
6,
even Byron Murphy and Mekhi Blackman.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very influential on the defensive secondary this last season. So
I read that list that Dustin listed out in order of importance.
as kind of a rough draft depth chart almost.
So if I was reading that correctly, then I went too far. Then his first out would be somebody like AJ Green, who he has listed at 17.
I like how this is a way sidetrack, but you swiped one way, and this is a point of contention for me.
Oh, man.
Because I think that a trackpad should, if you swipe down, the page should go down, and if you swipe up, the page should go up.
It's like a touch screen, dude.
Right?
Think of how would you swipe it if you were touching the screen?
I don't know. There's just something in my brain.
You're wrong.
That switches when I am on a laptop versus when I'm on my phone.
That's fine.
But it's just funny that you would reach over and touch my computer.
I was also trying to like not
by that way.
Get too far away from my mic. If you're watching, this is peak podcast right here. Yeah.
We're awkward. It's fine.
That's okay.
It is what it is. Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, obviously not even like an opinion, but just a fact of the matter is there will have to be some cuts made. There will have to be changes of some nature. Maybe it's not even a cut, but there can't be 17 defensive backs on a team. It just can't happen.
And something we haven't even said yet that, as much as you wouldn't want it to be, but is absolutely a factor in all of this, is the financials.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody like, I'm just picking a name out here, maybe Lewis Seen can't be cut this year just because then you're eating a bunch of money from a first round picks contract. I don't know that that's the case, but like, yeah, maybe we're just looking at it from a play standpoint, but yeah.
Well, I mean, theoretically,
the contracts will factor into that.
Theoretically, the Vikings have already eaten a lot of his contract because he hasn't played at all.
Yeah. I think back in that specific scenario, I think back to Laquan Treadwell.
Yeah.
His last year with the Vikings cut him either in training camp or, at final cutdowns or pretty early in the season. And then there were injuries and needs at the wide receiver position, and Laquan Treadwell was still on the street, and they signed him again. And part of the reason they signed him again was obviously they needed bodies in the room for wide receivers, but also like he didn't cost any more. He had already been paid that money, and apparently, and it kind of surprised me, when they signed him again, like that was just, they were already paying him, so he could just come back and still. I
didn't know how that worked.
It was probably like a bad deal for him, because like he could have just been sitting on the couch and still earning that money, but then his job was like, actually, no, you can come back and you're not going to get paid.
Or he could have gone and signed with another team and made the Vikings money plus.
Well, and that's a whole like offset language, and I don't know anything about what his situation was, but yeah,
Well, I know I can speak to, because I'm a teacher and I know how it works in teacher world. A lot of people that teach in Iowa where we live, they'll teach until they hit their pension number. Sure. And then they'll retire, and then they'll go across the river, and they'll teach in Illinois, and they'll draw on their pension in Iowa, and they'll take a salary from Illinois, and they'll kind of double dip. And
as much as a cesspool of a state Illinois is, being a teacher over there is not the worst.
They get paid more.
They get paid more, and their retirement seems to be a little bit better. Though I'm not super complaining about Iowa's teachers, because I joke with my wife, about 40% of our, maybe 30% of our household income is teacher salary.
Well, some of your income comes from that, and
yeah,
100% of mine does, because my wife and I are both teachers. So we're definitely caught up in that world. But
you guys are saints. I couldn't do it.
Anyways, definitely going to be interesting to see how these free agent acquisitions and these draft picks meld together and create that final 53-man roster.
Yeah, that'll be a talker for us for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait for that, and I can't wait to see who ends up on the list. And to some extent, as bad as it seems, I can't wait to see who ends up off that list, because there are some names that I hope end up not on that list. No offense to the human beings behind those names, and I wish them well, but anyways, there's a lot of hope and a lot of expectation in the Vikings' future. Maybe not immediately, maybe not this season, but with the draft, with some of these free agent acquisitions, some good times ahead, hopefully.
Yeah. And we say it, this season is going to lower expectations, almost a crapshoot. It's almost like a red shirt. Like, you just want to see exciting things. I'm a total hypocrite, because I'm going to be super pissed after every loss and every interception. I'm still going to be just as mad.
Burn it down.
Fire
Start
everybody.
over.
No, but it'll be a fun season, and hopefully better than we expect.